Those of us who, if you would like to, there are still seats on the bus. It's a field trip that will be going on sort of stops. I won't call them stations of the cross exactly, but stops along the history of Jewish Connecticut. Now, speaking of Jewish Connecticut, those of us who read the newspaper or tune into television these days, you can't help but watch these scenes of refugees, as the rabbi indicated, coming out of Northern Africa, out of Syria and other countries, seeking refuge. And we call them a flood sometimes. We use that word, a flood of people. But really these are individuals. They're families, they're children, they're adults, they're desperate. And 100 years ago, they were us. They were Jews, fleeing from Eastern Europe, trying to desperately to find a place of safety, a place where they could work, where they wouldn't be chased, their houses burned, a place where, in fact, they could own land and farm, because Jews were not allowed to own land where they lived in the shtetls in Eastern Europe. So they found this place. And actually, the more I've read about it, the more I've been astonished, and Mary will tell us more about this, but that in the late 1800s, the early 1900s, when Rudfezedek started in Ludus, there were Jews that when they left Eastern Europe, where would they go? Well, there were three areas in the world that they were steered to. One was in northern Argentina, one was in Israel to start farming, and the other was eastern Connecticut. So we are really a way station in the history of our people in this continent. And I know that Mary will tell us much more about that through this evening. I want to quickly introduce Mary. It's Mary Donohue. You may have noticed Donohue is not. It's not a contraction of Donahuewitz or anything like that. It's Donohue. Mary has been one of our great historians in Connecticut. And she has focused for many years now on the history of Jews, in particular Jewish farmers in Connecticut. And one of the books that she has, just the most recent one, is this one, A Life of the Land. Now, it's Shabbat, so we're not going to be transacting money here, but you can order one tonight if you like, right here. Please put your name and address right on the table here. But that's one of her books. It's about the history of Connecticut farmers, Jewish farmers. And she is also the assistant publisher of Connecticut Explored magazine. And she's done a lot of work for the Jewish Historical Society of Greater Hartford and the Connecticut Preservation Society. So we are completely delighted to have Mary with us. And thank you so much. We look forward to learning from you. That's right. This is the official laying on of the microphone.
She didn't kiss his finger.
All right. I hope you can hear me. This is like one of the better setups I've ever been in as far as the tech goes, so this is just great. Usually I just count on being a mom and Irish to be loud enough for these kind of lectures, so this is a very nice change. And I want to thank you so much. I feel so honored to be here. I feel honored to be here at the beginning of your celebration year. I feel honored to be here at the beginning of the new year. And I feel honored to be here tonight to give this presentation. I've been working with the Gala Committee, the Celebration and Anniversary Committee for a year now, and it's hard to believe. I have to thank the Rabbi for her wonderful, solid support for this fantastic project. the members of the anniversary committee have all stepped up. They've become archivists, historians, travel directors, communication coordinators, you know who you are, and soon to be bus tour leaders. And it's just been a fabulous year, and I can't wait to see the booklet, the play, and take you all on the bus tour. So tonight, I want to talk to you a little bit about the big picture. As was mentioned, I do sometimes get a very kind of nicely put, discreet question like, Donahue, it's such an unusual Jewish name. But as David said, I've really spent over 25 years working with the Jewish Historical Society of Greater Hartford to reach out and record this farming history, which was quickly disappearing at the time we started this project. The first thing we did was the then director, Marshall Otstein of the Jewish Historical Society, who was a good New York girl, came to me and said, in my position at the Connecticut Historical Commission, and she said, you know, you guys have a lot of information about those white congregational churches, but I don't see a lot of information about synagogues. So that, I had to agree with her. So that led us to do a survey of over 46 buildings that were built as synagogues or used as synagogues or converted to synagogues before 1945. So I'm pleased to say that in the Blue Jewish History Journal, which is our survey of synagogues, both the Deep River building and the East Haddam building were featured, which was it worked out terrifically for this project. We then have gone down the road of researching and putting together exhibits, lectures, and books on resorts, on Jewish farming. The green book that you see the cover of here, Life of the Land, covers the period from 1890 to 1945. Right now we're researching the post-war history, and that has a wonderful story of its own, really, both in farming and in synagogues. So when you study history, you can study a subject an inch wide and a mile deep, or you can study history, you take a topic and you do it an inch deep and a mile wide. And tonight, my job is to do the inch deep and a mile wide. It'll be Ellen and the committee's job on the third to present you with the inch wide and a mile deep and really specialize in the wonderful history of your synagogue here. And it's two synagogues that came together for your anniversary. So I'm here to give you the big picture. So as we start, never buy a farm in a hurry. Never buy a farm unless you have enough capital to keep you for the first year. Not every Jew is a farmer. Don't think of buying a farm if your wife does not like farm life. This is from the Guide to the United States for the Jewish Immigrant, published in both English and Yiddish by the Daughters of the American Revolution in 1912. Now, I have a formal lecture, but we'll take questions and have some conversation afterwards. Connecticut's Jewish farmers have been thought of as a novelty since they began to arrive in the 1890s. Who ever heard of Jewish farmers? Jews weren't typically associated with farming, and certainly not with successful farming. Forbidden from owning land in Russia and Russian-occupied countries, Jews still came to America with some agricultural skills gained through cattle dealing, tenant farming, or raising cows, goats, and chickens. But in Connecticut, Jewish farmers pioneered the adoption of foodstuffs, such as eggs, milk, and broilers that could be really raised on worn-out, rocky New England soil. After all, rocks are known as Connecticut potatoes. Tobacco cultivation also proved a moneymaker. Large-scale use of scientifically designed chicken coops, the Jewish farm agent, the Jewish farm newspaper, and the Jewish farmers' cooperatives all became highly visible and highly successful aspects of Jewish farming in Connecticut. Formed by the Jewish Agricultural Society in 1911, the Farmers Credit Union in Fairfield, Connecticut, was among the first to create a model that was used across the country. But let's back up for a minute. Why Connecticut? By the 1880s, Connecticut had already received waves of immigrants from Ireland and Germany. German Jews had successfully petitioned the state legislature in 1843 to amend the state's constitution to allow public worship by Jews, and quickly formed congregations in the state's larger cities. But everything changed for the state's Jewish community beginning in the 1880s. Now, an immigrant generally has some resources: money to buy transportation tickets and food, family connections in the new country, and an established ethnic community to join. A refugee has nothing. No money, no connections, nobody looking out for him, and most significantly, absolutely nothing and nowhere to return to. Alarmed by the plight of refugees pouring into Western Europe, wealthier Western European Jews undertook relief efforts. This is that guide for the Jewish immigrant published by the DAR with the Immigrant Publication Society. And you can see right here in the middle, I know you can't read the type, but trust me, right in the middle, in this little booklet, it already says how to become a farmer. This is the Baron de Hirsch. The Baron Maurice de Hirsch, 1831 to 1896, was a wealthy German Jew and a philanthropist. He founded the Baron de Hirsch Fund in Germany. An industrialist and a builder of railroads, Baron de Hirsch constructed the railroad that carried the Orient Express to Istanbul. As part of a lifetime of philanthropy to needy Jews throughout Europe and the world, he set up the Baron de Hirsch Fund in the United States in 1891 to provide practical assistance to immigrant Jews fleeing Eastern European pogroms. Pogroms, organized raids on Jewish communities that included killings and the destruction of property, were condoned by civil authorities. The Jewish Back to the Land movement stressed the redemptive nature of farm life. This became a cornerstone in the Baron de Hirsch's philosophy and a strong element in the mission of the fund. Persecuted for 2 centuries under Russian rule, Eastern European Jews began emigrating to the United States in droves in the 1880s. Between 1881 and 1924, over 2.5 million Jews arrived in America. The overwhelming bulk of them either directly or indirectly from Eastern Europe. German Jews had arrived in America in the 1840s and had had some measure of success. They worried about the high numbers of Eastern European Jews living in crowded, filthy conditions in a tiny area on the Lower East Side of New York City, which is now a very trendy neighborhood, but was not then. They also worried that these impoverished Jews, with their foreign dress, language, diet, and customs, would arouse virulent anti-Semitism in America. These sentiments helped to drive the charitable impulse to move Jews out of the city to America's small towns and countryside. Jews were sent to become farmers in rural Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey, as well as far-flung places with picturesque names such as Bad Axe, Michigan, or Painted Woods, North Dakota. But what was Connecticut's interest in these international events, and how did it affect farming in the state? As early as 1880, the Hartford Daily Courant reported, quote, "The North German Lloyds have engaged to convey 3,000 Romanian Jews to New York before the end of the present year. The immigrants are sick of their own country and have been enabled to seek fresh homes across the Atlantic by their co-religionists. Their patrons provide funds not just for passage, but for the purchase of homes and farms in America," unquote. So that idea of farms is right there in 1880, right there in the Hartford Courant. It is noteworthy in this early article that the purchase of farms is already mentioned. A brief notice entitled "The Russian Refugees" appeared in the Hartford Daily Courant on June 28, 1882. It said, "The committee of the local Russian Aid Society engaged in the relief of Russian Jew refugees in the city issue a card asking assistance from the public. Money may be sent to the current office and will be duly acknowledged in these columns, or assistance may be given by procuring employment. Hartford has received a large number of these refugees. Work has been found for 200 in factories and on farms, and others are arriving daily," unquote. That is the first mention in the Hartford Courant of these Eastern European Jews coming to Hartford, the Hartford area. In a lengthy article that appeared 2 weeks later, a member of the Hartford Russian Aid Society was interviewed. He related, quote, These unfortunate people of the Jewish faith who have been robbed of their property and driven from their home by brutal bigotry of Russian mobs. During February and March, the local society received about 200 of these refugees through the General Committee of the Society in New York. But since the 1st of June, the immigrants have come directly to Hartford, chiefly from the Mansion House Committee of Liverpool. Among their number are students, tradesmen, and skilled artisans of nearly every class: watchmakers, optical instrument makers, mechanics, tailors, etc., as well as farmers. They are strictly sober in their habits and industrious. They look to agricultural pursuits for the winning of a prosperity that they so much desire. Naturally enough, many of them, when first placed on New England farms, vigorously objected to working on Saturdays and eating meat not slaughtered in accordance with Jewish rites. When asked whether these Russian Jews expect to abide permanently in this country or return to their native land hereafter, the gentlemen of the committee replied that they had come for good. The Russian Jews now among us are looking chiefly to agricultural pursuits, unquote. The first specifically agricultural efforts of the fund in the United States were directed toward revitalizing floundering Jewish farm communities and colonies in New Jersey. The fund had purchased 5,300 acres in Woodbine for America's first long-term Jewish agro-industrial community. In 1894, the Baron de Hirsch Agricultural College was established in nearby Vineland, New Jersey, and future Connecticut farmers numbered among its graduates. In the United States, the fund devoted significant financial resources to the Jewish Agricultural and Industrial Aid Society, founded in 1900, later named the Jewish Agricultural Society in 1922. And I can tell you that when I had some project historians that worked on this project with me, they went to your town records, for example, here in East Haddam, and actually counted the number of mortgages that are recorded with the Jewish Agricultural and Industrial Aid Society. Because even though it was my fondest desire, when I went to use the records of the Baron de Hirsch Fund, the Jewish Agricultural Aid Society in New York, actually they were in Brandeis then, now they're in New York City. I was hoping for the box that would have a list of every Connecticut Jewish farmer that got a mortgage, or a second mortgage, or a third mortgage, and they would be alphabetical and they would be neatly organized. And I was profoundly disappointed because what I found was a mixed bag of at that time, kind of disheveled records that had clearly been piled into a box, many boxes, probably directly from the file cabinets that they had been in. Now, since then, the American Jewish Historical Society has cataloged those papers, but alas, there is no comprehensive list or complete file of every mortgage that they gave a Jewish farmer in Connecticut. And so we'll never have a solid idea of exactly how many Jewish farmers there were. But in East Haddam, just by looking at your town records, you really see such a large group and so many names. So this was a hotbed. In the United States, the fund devoted significant resources to the Jewish Agricultural and Industrial Aid Society, and then they shortened their name to the Jewish Agricultural Society. The four objectives that they had were, first was to encourage agriculture among Jews in America and the removal of those working in crowded metropolitan sections to agricultural districts. The second was to grant loans to mechanics, artisans, and tradesmen to increase their earning capacity and to help them acquire homes in suburban and agricultural districts. Third was to remove industries that are now pursued in congested districts by aiding manufacturers and contractors to transfer their industries outside large cities. And by industries now pursued in congested districts, they meant the needle trades, all the textile trades. And to encourage, the fourth was to encourage cooperative creameries and factories and enterprises for canning and preserving fruits and vegetables. After 1907, the JAS abandoned efforts to move industries out of urban areas and concentrated just on farming. The JAS participated in efforts to move Jews out of the big cities notably New York, and onto farms. But, as we've said, not every Jewish immigrant can become a farmer, or even that all those who have claimed to be farmers abroad are fit to take up this work in this country. They then say, but we find the percentage of success can be increased, first by careful selection of the persons who are going to be assisted, second by the selection of suitable localities, irrespective of first cost of the ground, third by continuous supervision of the progress of the farmer, and by proper liberality when occasion arises. The JAS rejected loan or mortgage applications from applicants who had less than $400 to $1,200 in capital. So in 1908, they revamped their whole assistance program, and they included 4 innovative pilot programs that would prove themselves essential building blocks in the success of Jewish farmers. The 4 included the introduction of the Extension Department, which was responsible for a network of paid Yiddish-speaking farm agents. And there may be families here in East Haddam that worked with the farm agent for Connecticut for years was Benjamin Miller. And he was both Yiddish-speaking and English-speaking. Let's see, the second was that they had an employment bureau in New York City that placed Jews on working farms for wages and to gain agricultural experience. And as it's been explained to me many times by farmers, if you try farming once, you'll know if you like it or you don't like it. So they would put, it was like an internship program. You would try farming to see if you liked it. They had scholarships for American-born farm children, and they also published a farming magazine called The Jewish Farmer. The JAS felt strongly that periodic visits to individual farmers by Yiddish-speaking agricultural experts would allow for instruction on the best farming methods, lectures on agricultural subjects, and the organization of farmers' associations. Ken Lebo remembers Yiddish-speaking agents like Mr. Benjamin Miller visited our farm regularly to keep my father informed on the latest developments in the poultry industry and to offer advice while drinking a glass of tea. To my father, an isolated Jew in a strange land, this custom meant a lot. In addition to the direct assistance provided by the farm agent, the publication of a monthly farming magazine in both English and Yiddish, in Yiddish it was Der Yiddische Farmer, helped farmers with basic information. It was advertised as the first Yiddish farm magazine in the world. A claim which is probably not open to dispute. So, as a matter of fact, I just ordered 3 years worth of the Yiddish Farmer magazine from the 1930s, and it actually came from Israel. So I bought it on eBay, and it came from Israel. So now this, the Jewish Farmer was often reprinted. The first 15 or 20 years it was just in Yiddish, and then it was in Yiddish and English. But when it was just in Yiddish, they often reprinted illustrations with English captions from other farming journals. So you see the drawings of the how-to, and then it's got the English underneath. Then they also, many common farm vocabulary words that did not have a Yiddish translation. So the English word was used and somehow translated into a Yiddish alphabet look, but it was an English word. And we had a young professor, Dr. Avi Pat at the University of Hartford, who's a Yiddish reader, come, and I was dying to know what some of these articles were about in the early ones that are just in Yiddish. So he's reading them aloud to us, and they have a very conversational tone. So they're very much like, well, anybody with eyes could see, this is the way you should stack hay. And then it'll go on and they'll tell you about how to stack hay. Or they'll say, anyone should know that your cow needs, this and that and the other thing. So it was just fascinating to have him translate for us from these early articles. Now the magazine helped explain in very pragmatic, simple farm techniques. How to, as we said, how to stack hay, how to do simple things, transactions in the farming world. and it helped to relieve the loneliness of farm life. It also encouraged English-speaking children of Jewish farmers to take advantage of all the agricultural education offered by the state's agricultural colleges and the Extension Service. So after 1908, farm agents of the JAS provided mortgages to Jewish immigrants, helping them locate and purchase farms appropriate in size and type to the individual farmer's needs and skills. Almost all the refugees had to adapt to a new culture, climate, and occupation. The farm agents often helped them obtain farms that featured not only the house and the barn, but household furnishings and farming equipment. Farm wagons, cars, and trucks are often cited in the deeds. Quote, when some of the old Yankee farms were auctioned off and the Jews bought them, they did not pay a whole lot, recalled Zeke Levering of Colchester. I remember back in the 20s, a family bought 25 acres, 7 cows, and 20 chickens for $3,800. In granting mortgages, the JAS often wrote in deeds, into the deeds stern stipulations that the farmer was required to follow, including keep the property insured against fire, occupy the residence, engage in no change in ownership, keep the buildings in sanitary condition, cultivate the farm, and pay the taxes. In exchange, the JAS offered to take a second or a third position among creditors. One deed in Columbia, Connecticut, gave a farmer $1,200 for 150 acres of land with buildings in Columbia and Hebron that was already encumbered with a first mortgage of $2,100 and a lien of $1,900. The schedule of payments of principal called for an amount of $150 annually from 1924 to 1927 and $200 after that, and interest at 5%. Bad debts were hard for the JAS to collect, but the Hartford Current reported the following story in 1923, quote, the Jewish Agricultural Society of New York was given foreclosure judgment to recover $3,565.41 from Jacob Fine due on a mortgage on a farm in Thompsonville by Judge Manable in Superior Court yesterday. It was claimed that Fine had not paid anything on the mortgage since he bought the farm over a year ago, and that the Aid Society had been forced to pay the taxes and other bills, unquote. All farmers live close to the edge economically, but Jewish farmers could be especially hard hit by any misfortune. An article in the Hartford Daily Current in 1900 relates this sad story from Salem, Connecticut, entitled The Hard Lot of a Struggling Farmer. Abraham Goldstein, whose house burned one night last week, is reported to have lost in the fire a large sum of money which he had borrowed in order to build a new house. The family had narrow escapes themselves. Goldstein, who was a Russian Jew, has had a hard time the last few years to get a living and interest from one of the most barren farms in the state. By thrift and economy, he managed to rise above adversity, provide for his family, and get ahead a little. It is a hard blow for him to be cleaned out of all his furniture and clothing, which has taken him years to obtain, unquote. Initially, beginning in the 1890s, Jewish farmers continued the type of subsistence farming practiced in the state, in which farmers grew crops principally for their family's consumption and sold any extra. But by 1920, as the consumer demand for eggs, milk, and poultry grew, specialization became much more profitable than subsistence farming. In 1911, the Agricultural Experiment Station in New Haven discovered vitamin A in whole milk. Mothers were encouraged to include cow's milk in their children's diets. The University of Connecticut at stores displayed scientifically designed chicken coops in 1918, and these and other modern scientific farming methods were continually published in the Jewish Farmer. Jewish farmers were very progressive and quick to adopt new practices. I kind of think they weren't sort of stuck in such a rut as some of the Yankee farmers, I think, probably would have been. Jews did particularly well in the poultry industry, not only as farmers, but also as feed suppliers and chicken dealers, carting chickens to wholesalers and retailers who were also often Jewish. Connecticut Jewish farmers had no ready-made Jewish farming community to step into. They lived close enough to towns like Norwich, New London, Willimantic, and Colchester, where they could subsidize their farm income by working as tailors, shoemakers, or butchers, trades brought over from the old country. The New London Day reported in 1891 that some garment industry piecework was being done in the tiny farming community of Chesterfield. Now, the lady that told us about her family in Chesterfield said that when she was little, her grandparents and aunts and uncles would all talk about the pants factory. And Chesterfield, which I'm going to show you a slide of in a minute, is tiny. And she couldn't figure out where, she knew everybody, where could this pants factory be? Well, the pants factory was really everybody's living rooms, because the New York cut pieces would come up, the fabric would come up already cut, be dropped off by ship in boat in Norwich, would get picked up, they'd take it by wagon up to Chesterfield, they'd divvy it out, they'd sew it in their living rooms into pants, and then it would go back the same way to New York. So she was an adult before she figured out there was no pants factory somewhere, but that's how they referred to it. So let's take a look at some farms and farm pictures. This is more about the Jewish Agricultural and Industrial Aid Society. It talks about all the things that they can offer. Now this is an early 20th century newspaper article, and it's called "Solving the Problem of Making Farm Life Attractive." And then the headline says, "Jewish Agricultural and Industrial Aid Society has effectively coped with the lure of the city and is unable to meet the request of people who wish to go back to the land." This happens to be the Himmelstein farm in Lebanon, which has now been in the same family for 100 years and has been painted. So I'm chagrined that I don't have a better picture after the paint job. This is the barn. It's on Route 14. And they still have chickens. And these are the Liebman coops at Grand Lake in Lebanon. And when I first saw these buildings as an architectural historian, I thought they were some kind of early industry, some kind of little factory that made something. Well, they did, they made eggs. But these are just such an industrial style. And I know Ken Simon may be here. He's one of our special guests on the bus tour. His family at the Joymax farm had this style of industrial style coops. They look like they could be little textile factories. This is a shipping crate. You send your eggs on the trolley or on the train, or later on by truck. This is in Mansfield, Jewish chicken yard in Mansfield. Often the chickens were considered, when it was a smaller scale activity, the chickens were the wife's responsibility. And you hear some of these people talk about their mothers or grandmothers were called pin money. And they would be talking about hundreds of chickens